Here we go. So I'm going to show you what it is we're going to be doing this week. So I've got this simple object and texture to demonstrate. Oh, that is the UV unwrap. Let me get an actual texture. Although this kind of just reveals what the UVs look like. In this case, it doesn't really matter. Oh, where did I save it? I'll tell you what, I've got a picture of it regardless. This is the example I was showing, which is just a simple texture that I downloaded and applied to this barrel. And what's going on in this barrel is that the same square texture is repeating in all directions. So it's repeating twice up and down, and I think it's 4 times around. And on the caps, it's repeating 4 times as well. I'm not actually going to provide to you the basic unwrap because it's assumed that you're just putting this in one big square. So you're going to make a square texture, just big plain square, and then apply it to the barrel to check your work, and the goal is to make it seamless and repeatable. Okay? Seamless repeatable textures are a mainstay of a lot of game development because you can apply your high quality texture to a large area, such as landscape or really large walls, roofs, whatever. And by repeating it, you end up being able to see nice high quality when you walk right up to it, and typically can act as a base material if you're going to apply decals or extra layers on top of it as well. Okay? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to really quickly show you how to do that in both Photoshop and Krita, and it's not going to take very long, but we do have to start with something to make it work properly. So in my files, I have just a bunch of random paintings, and the one that has a background is this fish, and I used it for the example as well. So I'm going to just create a new file and make sure it's square. 2048 is a good size to just kind of mess around with, but it's not unusual to make these at larger sizes so that you can save smaller. A convention when working with canvas sizes in digital art is that you can always shrink it down with no problem, but you can't necessarily make it larger without losing some quality. So if in doubt, make it larger. Okay? So 2048 is going to be fine for a basic shape. And then I'm going to drag this fish guy in here, and he's really, really small, but I'm just going to blow him up so he's almost as big as the canvas to do our demonstration. Okay? So this could already be applied to the tube if we want to. And in fact, why don't we go ahead and do that, because it will give us an example where we have all of these borders around this, these gray borders, is going to make it look worse. And so that'll be nice when I fix it up and I can make it look better. There's a tiling tube. What's the name of it? Tube texture. So again, the only thing you got to worry about is saving it with the exact same name as the file that is included, which is tube_texture. I'm just going to go ahead and replace it. And then I'm going to drag that into this window again. So the tube material file, object file, and texture, 1, 2, 3. And here it is applied to the barrel. So every place you see a fish face, that's where your texture will be applied. Okay? But the goal is to make it so that we don't see the big gray lines between each one. So you can see several times around, once on top of and below, and then on the lids I just made it so it would tile the opposite way because that's going to make it really easy for me to check. So the center of each image is actually way off the corner of the circle, and the corner of your texture is right here in the center. That means if you do your job right, this will look fine and this will look fine. If you don't do your job right, this might look fine, this will look bad. Okay, so if you're looking to just check your texture edges easily, drag it on the barrel and just look at one of the end caps, and it will tell you right away whether or not you've done enough work. Okay? So let's take a look in Photoshop then. What we need to do is we need to move this painting off the canvas. Okay, yeah. So this is a smart object. It's not going to allow me to do a lot of things to it unless I rasterize the layer, which I'll just go ahead and do right now. So what we need to do is move this off the canvas, right, until it's cut in half, and then take the part that went off the canvas and move it back on the right side. Then we need to do that again, but vertically. So we need to move it off the canvas this way, but now if it's already halfway off this way, we would have the bottom corner ending up here, the top corner ending up here, and the bottom left corner ending up here. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. So I'm going to place this right in the center roughly. It won't really matter if it's perfect because offsetting will be mathematically perfect. And then I'm going to offset this layer. So we go to Filter, Other, Offset. The amount is something that you're going to have to either figure out from the size of your texture. Yeah, it's thinking with portals. You're going to have to figure out this from the size of your texture, so just your texture size divided by 2. Or in Krita, there's actually a button for it. So I have a 2048, which is one of our power of 2 sizes for a texture. The next size down from that is 1024. So when we enable this preview, it will work perfectly. Okay, and I know it looks a little off-center. That's because I placed it off-center. It'll still work perfectly. You do have to make sure that we're set to wrap around, because if you're not, then it won't work. Okay, and I'm just going to say OK. All right, so that would be sort of the second step in your process. The first step would be painting the thing in the first place, whatever it is. And you can decorate this barrel any way you want. If you want to theme it, then that would be a really good idea. So you could make it appear to be a big wooden log sort of thing. You can make it look like it's made of bricks or metal or stucco or fabric or anything you want. That would be step one. Do your painting. It may reach the edges, it may not. It doesn't matter. Then we offset it. Okay. Then we need to fix these seams. We need to make it seem like there are no interruptions between these 4 corners of painting. And so what I like to do is just get a new layer on top initially, and then just paint on that new layer so that I can check back and forth and see how well I'm doing. So I think I've got a brush that will match that background. I'm going to sample a color, right, and just start filling it in like that. Okay. Inevitably, though, you're probably going to need to do this a few times because your process isn't going to be completely perfect. When I paint up to these corners, for instance, anything that I paint right up to this corner is going to have to tile with the opposite corner over here. And there's very little chance that I can use brush strokes to line that up perfectly without offsetting it a second time. So just know that one of the things I would anticipate is that I'm going to have to come back in and fix this at least one more time, maybe even more than that. Okay, so I'm just kind of painting these cloudy brush strokes between these areas, just generally, and fill it all up. Just fill it with blue. And I know that my character isn't really going to continue past his chest down, so I'm just allowing that to just fade out here with a little blue. But we will have to repair the center of his chest as part of the texture as well. So whatever I'm putting right here, I can either erase that out before I tile, or I'm going to have to fix that with additional texturing. So just a few of these. Here we go. And then up at the top here, same thing's going to occur. We're probably going to have to fix that as well because it won't line up with the bottom. We'll say that's probably about right. I don't know what to do between these two except for like just gradient from dark to light, so I guess that's what I'll do. And using my kind of bubbly textured brush, I guess we'll give it this kind of line. If I wanted to make this really not obvious, I'd probably stagger this line. So I'd make it go up in some places and down in others to kind of get it off this single line to make it look more natural. But I'm not really concerned with that here because we're just kind of doing this as a quick example. But just so that you know, it's sort of a bad practice to just have really obvious lines in your texture unless it's tile and grout or something like that. Okay, but with clouds, you'd want it to be a lot more natural. So we'll just say that's fine. Do just a little bit more like that, and sure. Okay, so now I've got texture filling up the entire painting. If I want to test this right now, I could. Okay, so we could just save that and put it on the barrel. Let's go ahead and do that. So save as, PNG, replace it. And also remember that you should be saving your native file as well. I didn't, right? Because I'm just doing a very fast demonstration for you guys. It's still called Untitled, but that is inviting disaster. That means that if anything happens, like it crashes, you've got to do all your work over again. So save your native file. Okay? So now I've got that PNG. Let's go ahead and apply it to the barrel to see what happens. Okay? So I get this really weird thing happening on the top. Okay. I get this really weird thing happening everywhere. So obviously this didn't work out very well. Okay. So let's go see what happened. For one thing, it doesn't appear to be tiling correctly, which is odd. So maybe I've got the wrong size. Or maybe I did something wrong with my offset, like I did the wrong amount of offset and just didn't notice. So let's see. I'm going to check my canvas size. I have a 2048 pixel canvas. Perfect. And how much did I offset by? Usually your last settings will be saved in here. 1024. So that all looks correct, but I don't know what the problem was. So notice here, when I go to offset again, filter other offset, not everything is being offset. Okay, what it's offsetting is just the layer I was just painting on. So if you are going to use many different layers to do your painting, you're going to have to offset each and every one of them individually, or merge all your layers together and offset them. I would prefer to keep the nice individual layers so that I can work on it. So I'm going to say OK, and then on my original layer I'm going to filter offset. You can just use this top one if the settings are exactly the same. Okay, so there's my guy's fish face, but oddly he seems to be like meandering off to the side here, so I'm not sure why that's happening, but he's like wandering off here. It may be due to the fact that I opened this in a not quite perfectly sized document. You shouldn't have this issue if you are just painting right from the start, but I think at this stage I'm going to shrink his head down a little bit and position him nicely, and I'm just going to merge these layers so that I have a completely filled layer, and that problem should go away at this point as soon as I fix all these little mistakes. So I'm going to go ahead and add one more layer on top and fix up all the little existing creases. You can see his face is okay because we just brought the original painting back, but there's all these little areas here where you can see where one color stops and another begins. So I'm going to grab that local color and just paint over it. And remember, try to shy away from this edge, because the more you paint on this edge, the more of a new seam you're going to create. Okay. So I'm going to fill up this stuff just a little bit like that. Trying to shy away from the edge so I don't create a new problem. In this one, it's unavoidable. I got to paint right over to this edge. And at some point, we can stop offsetting by perfect amounts and start offsetting just any old value that we want, because that will help us to see just specifically problem areas without getting them right lined up on the edge again, which is annoying. Okay. So a couple little holes and things here. Fill in this area. Okay, just like that. And we'll just say that's fine. Oh, there's a little bit on the bottom. So everywhere you can see this hard line, like you guys can see that, right? This. Okay, that's what we're looking to avoid. Don't have that remaining at the end of your process. So I'm just going to paint right over it, just like that. Okay. And then we should be good to try again. Actually, there's a little bit right here. So I'm going to grab his shirt color. And let's just get a little bit on that button. It's a pretty messy painting, so it makes it pretty easy. All right. We'll say that's fine. I'll go ahead and save a PNG again, and then throw it onto the barrel, and we should have a better result. Okay. Just letting it save. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, grab them. Hello, grab them. There. Okay. There we go. Okay, so the faces look fine now. See on the top? Yeah, and they're going off the edge. So we'll offset it the other way to make sure that it absolutely works. But now we've got just little bits of seam left, right? Because I didn't offset again to check that new little space. So we should be completely fine for the centers now. And if I offset it once more, then I can fix that last little error and get a nice seamless texture. Even though we can definitely tell where it tiles because I've got this big dark line in the middle. Okay. So one last time. Should be last time. Oh, just clicked the wrong thing. There we go. I'm going to merge these two layers, and I'm going to filter other offset. Okay. And there it is right there. is one of the seams. So I think what I'll do this time is I'm just going to mess around with the mount that I'm offsetting just to get this clearly in some visible place on the screen like that. It shouldn't matter what I use for numbers once most of the painting is tiling perfectly. Wherever a pixel exited screen, it's going to enter back on screen on this side, so I could set it to this really strange value and it won't destroy my work. But remember to keep it nice and even numbers when you're working on it initially. Don't just do this arbitrarily the whole time. That's not going to be a good way to work. For this little repair, I'm not even going to make a new layer because it's just a little cloudy bit. So I'm just going to grab that color. Okay, and that's that. I think that's all I needed to do. And let's look up and down. So since there was a seam there, we know there's one running all the way up here. So we just want to look carefully to make sure that we don't see any errors. And then the previous seam was running this way, right over their heads. I don't see any errors, although I do see right here above his head, this seam right here, I can see evidence of that. So I'm going to offset this a little bit more. And by a little bit more, I mean really a little bit more. Okay, so here we are. I'm just going to bring this further into the center of the screen. There we go. So that I can see it clearly. Sample a color. Paint that out. Take a look up and down. Okay. And if there's any other obvious place, hopefully there isn't. But now, no matter how many times I offset, I shouldn't get any strange little lines like that because they're basically gone. A good way to test this is just leave the preview mode on and just change these numbers and look. And just watch him as he scrolls by. All right, let's line up his face in the middle of the corners. Let's see. Okay, something like that, so that if I've done it wrong, it will be really, really obvious. Okay, but if I've done it right, now we'll get a face in the middle of the barrel cap, and the sides will still tile correctly. They'll just be tiling offset up and down a little bit. So let's save as. PNG. Replace that. Let it save. And then try to preview it, and hopefully it'll work. Okay. Grab my 3 files and drag them in. Yep, there we go. Nice fish guy on this blue cloudy barrel. And as we look around, there shouldn't be any obvious interruption of the cloud texture. Okay. And now the only difference is half the head is going off the top, half the head is coming on the bottom, and it's centered because previously the seam was going right through the center of the barrel. Okay. Any questions about that procedure?
Nope.
Nope. Cool. And it's all in the write-up as well. I even included images this time, so it should be pretty easy to follow. Let's just really quickly run through it in Krita as well, because it's almost identical, but not perfectly the same. Okay, so new file again. And we want a nice texture size like 2048 again. There we go. I'm going to drag my fish guy in once more. There he is. He's not even centered in this file. That's okay. We'll drop him down here. Let's see how big I can make him. I'll make him as large as possible because that will make the texture repair a little bit harder since his body and hat will be near the edge. So let's see. I can probably go a little bit bigger than that even. Right about there. He's going off the edge a little bit, but that shouldn't make a difference. Okay, so same thing in Krita. In order to offset this, and we could initially just paint a little bit on these edges if we wanted to, but we don't have to. In order to offset, we go up to Layer, Offset. Oh wait, Image Offset. Okay, and then Krita has a actual button here for us. So if you were working at some different size, you could just hit that button and it would set the proper amount to half of our canvas size. But I already have the values entered in. Just make sure that you're using pixels here. If we hit OK, again, it's only going to apply to the current active layer, not to the entire document, so be aware of that. I'm going to drag the fish underneath the empty layer so that I can paint right over these seams. I don't know what brush I have. I'll just use a really soft brush in this case. There we go. And I'll just sample all these colors and really quickly run through that. Make sure you fill everything in nicely. Trying to kind of mask the transition by using softer colors. Now you do have to paint right up to the edge though, so you're guaranteed to at least make one little extra edge that you're going to have to fix. And all of this will kind of depend on what specifically you're choosing to paint. Man-made textures tend to be a little bit easier because there are patterns in them that already have lines, and so sometimes that can mask the appearance of tiling, such as stone, concrete, metal, fabric. If you're doing something more natural like grass, wood, cloud, it can be a little harder to accomplish. Alright, so then I'm going to just do a little fading up there. Maybe try to make it look remotely bubbly, although I don't have a really good brush for it right at this moment. And then blend it with the color right underneath it. There we go. That'll do for that one. We could figure out something else to how he's supposed to tile vertically, but we don't really need to. Let's save this as a PNG as well. So I need to go into my tube folder and then change it to a PNG. Tube texture, pops the name right in there. Save, replace. And now we can drag that in and see if it worked. Okay, worked just fine, except you can see here is the new little tiling error that I introduced by not offsetting and painting a second time. But I won't go through all those steps again because you just saw me do it. You have to just fix all the visible seams so that it tiles nicely in every direction. Okay. Any questions? Sounds like no. Anyone still on the mic?
Yeah.
Okay. Nate, since you're the one person talking to me, do you have any questions?
No.
Cool. Then I'm happy. All right, so that's all I'm really going to show you guys today on Friday. I'll do an entire example from scratch, and we can discuss what types of materials would be wise to attempt and which ones would be harder to attempt. So if you end up doing it all on your own, you might pick something really hard inadvertently, or something way too easy that doesn't really challenge your painting ability. But we'll look at a few examples and kind of discuss why you need to do this and when it is especially difficult to do this right. Sometimes this requires some brush creation, but we have not really gotten into custom brush creation yet. So just do your best with the brushes that you have. Okay?
So we're basically doing a custom tile, basically, right?
Custom tiling texture. That's right.
Gotcha.
So are we basically just doing the Animal Crossing creation thing with the textures?
I don't know what you're talking about. Animal Crossing thing.
So in the tailor shop, you can pay like a small fee, and you can make basically a texture that you put on your clothes or on an umbrella or like.
Does it repeat the texture you make?
Yes.
Then yes, that would be it. That's it. All right, you guys. Very good. Let me know if you have any questions, and we will meet again on Friday.